You're listening to the Public Health Entrepreneurs Podcast with your host, Dr. Charlotte Huntley. Welcome to the podcast, Natalie. How are you?
I am well, Charlotte. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thanks. I'm excited to have you here. For everyone listening, thanks for joining us. This is Public Health Entrepreneurs, and this is the podcast for anyone who's at this intersection of public health entrepreneurship. If you are leading a business, starting a business, interested in a business that supports population health, this is the podcast for you, regardless of your exact background or area of expertise. On these episodes, I'm often sharing strategies and tips and guiding you to reaching your goals and dealing with all the strategies around navigating this path. But I also bring on guests who have services that are beneficial to all of you in this podcast audience or serve as inspiration. And Natalie is definitely an inspiration. So Natalie, why don't you take a moment and introduce yourself? Tell everyone a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm Natalie Poindexter, based in Austin, Texas, as an entrepreneur over the past almost 5 years now. I've been full-time in my business for 2.5 years. I started off as a grant strategist and grant writing consultant, and quickly learned that I wanted to do more. So I've dabbled in the community building space. I've dabbled in the events experience space as an entrepreneur. But most importantly, I've realized that the way that I can make the greatest impact is through creating tech products. And so I've taught myself how to build my next iteration of business, which is a tech product to do exactly what I was doing. It's your grant writer, your grant strategist, your grant support system. And that's been my work. I've intentionally wanted to disrupt positive disruption in every facet of the meaning. And that's where my passion lies. And then on the fun side, I like to do some creative writing and expression. So that's my world.
Oh my goodness. I'm so excited. So I purposely saved, I wanted updates and all that, but I purposely wanted to save it for this episode so that I could learn more in real time while we're recording this and the audience gets to discover more with me. Thank you for that introduction because there's so much I want to kind of dive into a bit. I'd like to really jump into more about the tech. I like how I'm really intrigued because you say that you created what you wanted. And tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah, so everybody knows about grants, right? They hear about them in the nonprofit world, in the business world. They might hear about procurement bids, those types of things. And it's a lot. It's a lot to understand. It's a lot to digest. And I'm a nerd in many ways. So I was like, well, maybe I could teach people about what it is that they need in that experience. But then I was also a consultant. So I'm like, how do I bridge this gap of education and also support? And that meant I needed to take what was in my head and write it all down. So this journey started a little over 3 years ago. I was a consultant for a healthcare system here in Texas. And they said, we have small businesses that are applying for these procurement bids, but man, they're missing content. They've never maybe written a safety plan before, so they aren't doing it well, but they're great businesses and they could do this work. Can you make something for them? And I was just like, sure. I don't know what that means, but maybe. Because I think that's also being an entrepreneur where you're like, yes, and, right? It's a little improv in the experience. And so this all started with making Word document templates, explaining what is it? What is a capability statement? Why do I need one? What do I put into it? And then what should it look like? And so we built out, myself and some people on my team, we built out about 20 different templates and then teaching guides so that we could actually educate these small business owners so that they're not fumbling and flustering through the experience, but they're also moving a little bit towards that equitable experience in accessing funding. So I was like, little sprinkle of the public health feel still there. And then fast forward, I'm not a tech person. I am not an engineer. I am not a programmer. I do not have a tech background. But I knew I needed to be able to help more people. I went from Word document to this thing called Notion, which is a easy tool, super cheap. You can make it look how you need it to look, put it into that. And then I finally had someone say, Natalie, this isn't a product you just use for your business. This is a product you use to help people. And I vibe coded. If you're not familiar with vibe coding, it's like ChatGPT. You talk to an AI tool and then it does the development for you. And so now that is how I have a B2B SaaS platform that supports both nonprofits and certified small businesses in their journey of finding funding, accessing funding, writing the funding, and then there's still the human capacity as well. So there's still human support, but AI power.
That is fascinating. So would this be something that so I have a lot of colleagues who are grant consultants. So is
Mhm.
this something they would use, or is this something that would replace them?
Never. I say this, I do not believe that in the grant world we can be replaced by AI. The intricacy of the language is too much. And then at some point, you might just start seeing the same applications come through if
Mhm.
you have AI writing them for you. So that's just a quiet
Right.
hint to everybody listening that thinks ChatGPT can handle the world. We'll just all be submitting the same grants. But what this does is makes it more efficient for grant writers. So this is a major pain point for most grant writers. We come in, there's always 5 alarm fire. I was trying to think the best way to, right? We come in and they're like, we have 3 weeks to get a grant out because our doors will close in 4 weeks. And we're like, that's not how this works. That's not what we do. And they're like, but you can save us. Right. And so as grant writers, we know that feeling where we're like, cool, let's do it. Where's your previous grants you've submitted? And they're like, oh, in the Google Drive. I think our program director has some documents for us. Our CFO has some budgets. The CFO has some budgets. And you're like, is it in one place? No, we don't know where it is. And you're like, so that's what this does. It forces the user to get organized so that as a grant writer, we can go in and say, all right, we have this library of content of grant opportunities. We've empowered and encouraged our executives to get what's in their head in one place, out of their head and in one place. And now we can structure this plan because we're expensive. We are very expensive. And so if there's a way to offset cost by putting a little bit more work on the user being the person who's going to get all of this content out of their head, it's helping grant writers because we still sometimes have to just make up everything
Right, right.
because there isn't anything that we can tangibly look at. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. It feels like, how was this missed? How did it go so long in the chaos?
I think genuinely it's one of those, this is just how we've always done it.
Mhm.
As the grant space, up until recently, there weren't really even grant databases. We had
Mm.
to search for everything. The grant stations or the Candids of the world. We knew about Candid, we knew about GuideStar, but
Mhm.
that was more for who has the money,
Mhm.
not is it available.
Right.
And then also, I don't know that as grant writers, we are always considered the educators because we are teaching our clients how to do this process in
Right.
a way, but we aren't teaching them you have to come back
Mhm.
because they think, oh, we got this grant, we're good for 12 months.
Yeah.
Sure, but what's happening after the 12 months? You need to call us at like the 8-month mark
Right.
and not at the final hour
Yeah.
of dawning, and hope that we can do some really good work.
Right, right. You solved this problem. You saw this problem. You had a solution. You'd always remind people as consultants, that's what we were, problem solvers. How well received, well, actually, before I say that, who are your ideal clients for this service?
Yeah, ideal clients are folks who have gone after funding before, are intentionally going after at least 50K a year in grant opportunities, and they're overwhelmed. They're tired of being overwhelmed. They know there has to be a better process out there. Maybe they're the grant writer who has too many clients at this point. And now you're having to say no. You can bring your clients onto the platform and structure all of them in one place so that you know, okay, I have one client that has 3 applications pending, one client that has one that we really need to get right. You have all of your deadlines in one place. And then it's also, I would even say, for the larger foundations who are wanting to actually support their applicants. That's how this all got started with the procurement office. It was, we know we need to provide tools and resources that don't exist.
Mhm.
So that's the other potential partnership or client that would be useful for this.
Okay. I'm just thinking now, just as you are stepping into developing this, because you said I'm not a tech person, but how did it feel to step into an area that didn't feel like your zone, maybe, and to go to that process, create this, and then to validate it by selling it and getting clients? Like, how did that feel as an entrepreneur going through those steps?
It's been exhausting, and not in a negative way, but as entrepreneurs, we always are learning.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You said earlier we're solving a problem. We see the problem and we're like, I could come up with something that could make this better. And I knew it had to be better. I just didn't understand how. So the Word document made sense to me,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm like, that's whatever, I can handle that. But then after putting that out, and I think that's what I also learned as well, it doesn't have to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we sit on things so long because it's not perfect, which I don't actually know what that means as an entrepreneur. I feel like we didn't become entrepreneurs to be perfect, you know?
Right.
It for me was like, man, there was a little bit of doubt of, can I build something if I'm not a tech person? I knew the ins and outs so well. What I envisioned it being is exactly that. I just had to learn how to say it out loud.
Yes. You touched on some really, I think listening, I can imagine some listeners feeling reassured because it's scary on this route. Like we can be confident about our ability to do this, to have the solution, to deliver. And then there's other parts of it that will make us equally fearful and afraid and doubt ourselves, but it's kind of pressing through. And then
Mhm.
I feel like sometimes the biggest reward is when you go all the way through and you deliver and you see it happen where you're actually able to help solve the problem for an organization, for a group. And it's like, yes, it's like that full circle feeling. This journey is full of those moments where it's scary, but you press through and you do it anyway. And you're wondering and you feel confident and you feel doubtful and questioning yourself. It's the whole mixture. I don't think you ever really get to a place where you don't have those feelings cycling through on some
Mhm.
level. It's always there. This is really great, Natalie. Now, thank you for sharing and really,
Of
going
course.
to life. It's really, really helpful to hear. You mentioned that you are full time in your business now. I know that people who, like myself, I worked full time which was really a great job. I was happy. I didn't really expect to leave the job. I thought I would just grow this business and I have this career and they would coexist. And we got to a point where I had to make a decision because the business had grown as far as I could grow with doing both. I had to let go of one or the
Mhm.
other. I made the decision to go all in and I was excited and kept going. But some people start out knowing that's exactly where they want to be and that's what they want to do. And I guess the point is there's no right or wrong. It's very a unique journey. Tell me again, how long have you been full time in your business?
March of 2023.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
So very interesting
2.5
time.
years, little.
Mhm.
Yes.
'Cause it's like settle after the real chaos of the pandemic, but right before the chaos of this this year, just the time of this recording, the end of 2025, this
Mhm.
new political administration that is just really had turned all industries upside down, but public health especially. So it's been a
Mhm.
very challenging year to be in a health-focused space as an entrepreneur, I would say. So starting your business kinda in the quiet, the calm between the 2 storms is what I'm thinking.
I think genuinely entrepreneurship was not something that I ever imagined myself being in. It was more of a push that I was given
Mhm.
and a moment of rebellion in a way where I was like, this is something I'm just going to say I'm going to do because no one else is doing it, at least that I know of, right? And that
Yeah.
really was building this tech product. But it is one of those moments of I don't know how I made it, truly, because I'm like, this was not planned. I didn't plan for this to happen, but it happened. And it's been the best journey I could be on, genuinely.
Love that. Okay, I'm going to ask you, it's kind of like a two-part question.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like the best and the worst. But
Mhm.
I'd love to start with you sharing what do you love most about consulting and entrepreneurship? And then you can follow back with what do you like least?
My favorite part about being a consultant is I can say things that I could never say as an employee
Yes.
and have them received well.
Hmm.
I remember being that employee and I'm like, couldn't we try something different? And people were like, don't do that. We don't. We don't do different, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
then on the flip side, the part that I don't like about being a consultant is I sometimes think clients forget they hired us for a specific reason.
Mm.
And it was to support them in something they couldn't do, didn't have time to do, or didn't understand how to do. And so that's why they brought us in. But I don't know if this is a regular occurring thing for most consultants, but I know for me, I'm like, are you a grant writer too? That's crazy. Why am I writing? Why am I writing then? Why am I here? I don't understand. So I have that quiet reflection of, are they serious? So I would say my favorite part is I can say what I need to say. And my least favorite part is I think clients can get an amnesia sometimes.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm. So I'm trying to reflect and see. I don't think I've had that problem,
Sure.
which is good,
Yeah.
but I definitely can see that being an issue. How do you handle that?
Quiet correction. Sometimes and I do think that consultants become the proverbial bartenders in a way. We become the let me dump my problems onto you person. Because
Mhm.
even if it's just verbally, I just need to express this out loud that this is a frustrating experience or this process is frustrating. And we have to nod and say, okay, yeah. And usually what I'll do is a quiet reminder of don't forget why we're doing this.
Mhm.
And then don't forget that we're doing it differently. And so, for instance, the way I do things is you should be able to create multiple grants that support your institution and shop those grants to the most right funders throughout the entire year. This shouldn't be a one time practice. I do think easing them a little bit into understanding this isn't a one time experience, even if it's a one time experience. This is something I want them to be able to repeat on their own. And I think giving them that nudge towards empowerment is the way I kind of settled them a smidge. And then some, they're the one time client.
Right, right. Because that's a beautiful thing too, is over time, you really do get to decide who you do business with. I mean, at the beginning, we feel like we say yes to all the opportunities, right? But
Yeah.
after a while, we really do get to decide who we do business with. I have a quiet philosophy. My coach is aware of this, and well, she actually teaches this quite often, but I only work with 4 and 5 star clients. And my team is only comprised of 4 and 5 star employees. So that means if I have a client, and we do have a system on the back end, we do rate those clients. And if we work together for a while and those clients are below that, it doesn't make them bad, but it's just we get to decide. That means that we get the most excited about, we could get behind the mission of the organization, is most aligned with what we do. The communication is good and strong. And like all of those things for us make for a 4 or 5 star client. And we work with a lot of large organizations, so it's really messy. So it's not that there aren't issues and it's not messy. That comes with the territory. It's going to be that way. It's
Sure.
just that those, for us, it's the communication, the alignment with the values, because that has us showing up, and those are some of the things that make it worthwhile. And so we get to decide,
Mhm.
at the end of that term, we're not even talk about renewal if they're not 4 or 5 stars.
Yes. I just learned about that scoring your clients.
Hmm.
I just went through a program and I think all of us, all of us women that were in that program, we all had this moment of, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I used to tell myself when I fired proverbially fired a first client, my dad would always say, Natalie, not all money is good money.
Yeah.
And I had to remember that as a early entrepreneur because I was saying yes. I'm like, yep, check, got it.
Yeah.
We're doing this. Money. And then I'm like, oh, I'm tired
Mhm.
because you are bad behavior. You have very bad behavior.
Yeah.
But I said yes to you. So now I have to deliver this. Got it. It took hearing from someone else who had been through that journey already to say, you don't have to work with everybody, right?
Yeah, yeah. That's a game changer, right?
It's massive.
Mhm. That's how we on the consulting side for my business and I do the same thing with coaching because when I stick to that, then those clients challenge me and I show up as, like, super coach. I get the
Mhm.
best of me, they show up their best. It's, like, such a good match. So, anyway, we've digressed a bit, but I think that's really
It's
good.
okay.
I love hearing about your journey, and I love what you share about, what you like most and least. I will ask this final question as we kind of wrap
Okay.
up, and it's been so much fun to chat with you.
Same.
In what ways are you advancing public health through your business?
Yeah. So I'm going to take this back. It might be a slightly long winded answer, but I started my business because I was working the public health response here in Austin, Travis County. And I heard one of our executives say early on during COVID, we have more funding than we know who to give it to because we've already given it to the people we typically give it to. And my first thing was, I have questions. I have lots of questions because who'd you say you were going to give it to? And then why aren't people going after this funding and these opportunities? So that was what drove me becoming an entrepreneur, becoming a consultant, and being able to say, okay, it's lack of information, lack of education, noted. How can I start communicating to people that grant opportunities exist? Fast forward to this experience now, I think that public health systems are in crisis mode. And especially if your institution, if you're maybe in a physician's desert, a food desert, a social service, whatever of the more social services deserts plus public health desert, right? Because as a public health person, it's everything. That's really true, right? It's everything.
Yeah.
But they're still tasked with supporting that community that they're caring for. And I think two-part. One is creating this tool means that those smaller systems, those smaller institutions can actually afford support now. Because as consultants, we're pretty expensive. But as a subscription tech service, well, that's like a quarter of what you might spend on a consultant until you have the ability to hire a person, right? Because that's the idea is that you
Mhm.
bring in more revenue. Now you can actually hire that consultant,
Right.
hire that human. So that's one way that I think I'm doing something. And then on the other side, I feel like I'm taking a different direction towards public health right now of centering community health and true health. My one moment of a soapbox, and I know this is the last question, so I'm just going to throw this in here. I have been talking about allostatic stressors since I was in undergrad. And when I learned what those were, those things that we keep under the surface that still perpetuate illness, challenges in our bodies and our community and our life, that's what we aren't focused on. And I think that's the part where I can come in and say, let's just sit together and be still. Let's re regulate your nervous system because that's free. It's bringing you around other people. And that really is community health, community centric health. And if we start talking to each other, maybe after we've sat still for a second, and then we find out you have resources, I don't have those resources, but I have these resources. Can we swap resources? Yeah, you have a food pantry, I have a library. Got it. We can now start shifting public health without having to dismantle the systems that are kind of being dismantled for us. It's a very long-winded answer, but I think we are all exhausted. And as public health professionals, we see it. we know where exhaustion leads. And then now you're sick. You don't feel well. And so then it's just this cycle. So I'm like, what if the public health professionals who are disruptors are the ones that are going to be like quietly teaching everyone how to navigate all of these changes? I don't know if we can do it. I think we can. That's the different direction I think I'm going with public health.
Oh, it's amazing. So amazing, Natalie. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for what you're doing. I love the innovation. I love that you are part of the solution because you're right. We're rebuilding a new public health, and your perspective and your tools are well received. And I'm excited to have you sharing it on this podcast and hopefully inspiring our listeners to take some action on some of these ideas that they're also having, maybe feeling a little hesitant for whatever reason. What is the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn under Natalie Poindexter. My website is up under nataliepoindexter.com, and you can get forwarded to any of the things that I have my hands in. And if you are an Instagram person, I think my personality side, my creative side is on Instagram, again, under Natalie Poindexter.
Wonderful. And we'll also have links to that on the show notes page
Thank you.
for this episode. Thank you so much, Natalie. It has been wonderful to catch up with you, to learn so much more about what you're doing, and to visit with you for a while. Appreciate you making time for us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so passionate about public health, so being able to talk about it is just inspiring. So thank you for giving me that as well.
My pleasure. Thank you for listening. Visit publichealthentrepreneurs.com to learn more.